when you're truly successful is when your partners want you to win.
Welcome to the Lean Scale Podcast, where we talk about everything RevOps. Thank you for listening.
Today we're going to be talking about partnerships. In my opinion, one of the most overlooked areas of a go-to-market strategy, and I'm super excited. I have an amazing guest here today. His name is Tim White. He's a 3-time Chief Partnership Officer for scaling technology companies, currently the co-founder and Chief Partnership Officer of Wealth, and most importantly, one of my good friends. Tim, thank you so much for being here. Super excited.
I am absolutely thrilled to be here. And Anthony, I got to tell you, I'm so proud of you. What you built at Lean Scale is absolutely incredible. You've done something really amazing here. And I'm just getting to know you over the years and seeing this come to fruition. It's awesome. Super awesome. So happy to be here.
Thank you.
Happy to be here. Happy to talk about partnerships.
Thank you. Support's much appreciated. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's get cracking.
Cool. Well, do we have any special guests that...
We do. Yeah, funny you say that. So come on over here. This is my assistant, William Matthew White. This is my son. He's 9, just graduated 3rd grade. William, say hi to the audience.
Hi.
Good job. High five now. All right.
Awesome.
Good job.
William, I think you're going to be the next guest. We'll do a better partnerships episode next time.
Teeing it up. Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll have your dad warm up the topic. But
I love it.
So back to partnerships. I think, in my opinion, I mentioned it, it's just so overlooked. And I think people don't really have the right mindset when they're approaching partnerships. And you've done this, and I think you did partnerships before you even had partnerships in your title. But tell me, what's the mindset you need to have if you're going to be building a partnership program or if you're going into a partnership role?
Oh, that's a great question. First and foremost, I mean, going into the partnership role, it's, you got to find people that just love building relationships. And you need to find people that really are eager to establish trust. And, one of the things I always say to my partnership teams, and, look at, if you wake up in the morning and you look at your inbox and a good day has 0 problems, you're in the wrong role. In partnerships, you open up that inbox and it's always, hey, I need to find a pin to a grenade. Oh, I need to cut the red wire, the blue wire. So there's always a situation where you need to figure out a Rubik's Cube and you need to balance things, because you're not only thinking about the company's interests, but also your partner's interest. And, as you start to grow your partnership strategy and bringing on different relationships, oftentimes there is some challenges that can face just with the competition, right? You start to have partners that are starting to rub shoulders, which, is something that's not easy to balance, but, one thing that also just needs a lot of attention. So, having people that have that mindset is just super, super, super critical. I think when you're thinking about opening up partnerships within your organization, is you needed to look internally. Is this part of our overall objective? Is this our go-to-market motion? How will this add to what we're doing? Because if you're going at it and you're saying, we do want to have a thriving direct business where we're selling direct to accounts. At the same time, we want to have a robust partnership program. You're going to have teams that have different agendas internally, where you need to think about compensation. You need to think about, who's going to have authority when things start to build, when there's, let's say, some tension building within an account. And I can give you some examples of that. But yeah, it's definitely an assessment that needs to happen. But I'll tell you, I love it. I live and breathe it. Nothing is more exhilarating than building a successful channel program where your partners not only are excited about the growth, the revenue, but also really want to champion you to win. And I was on this flight just recently, funny enough, Anthony, I had this 83-year-old woman sitting next to me. it was bucket seat. It was American Airlines. It was a 4-hour or whatever it is, New York to Phoenix flight, a long one. And she was awesome. She just wanted to chat the whole time, which was not the state I was in at the moment, but, I'm always up for a good conversation.
Looking to maybe take a nap.
Yeah, exactly. I was
relax a little bit, watch a movie.
Long week in New York. I'm like, all right, I got to plug away some emails and I want to watch a movie. But okay, all right, hold on. Let's pause and talk for 3 hours. But it was funny. She was talking about her life and business. And she said, you know what? And I talked about partnerships, of course. And she said, when you're truly successful is when your partners want you to win. And I just thought that was like powerful. And I sat back, I go, you know what? That was true. That was the case and many times over, and especially at the venture that you and I worked together at.
That's really sage. And I think that's something that I've always seen this. And I know you've seen this too, because we've been in the same situations before, but people approaching partnerships with the perspective of what can I get out of this partnership? So I want to build a channel because I just want to sell more of my product and I don't really care what the partner gets out of this, but I'm building partnership programs for the sole purpose of just seeing what I can win out of it. And I think most people don't understand the give to get mentality that partnerships demands more than anything else. I don't know. What helps people get past that? Because in the beginning stages of partnership, when you're investing, there's concessions that you typically have to make. It takes longer than everybody always thinks it's going to take. How do you get people past that mindset?
It's interesting you say that. There's an interview, and I've had one of those things where you come across an interview and then you just can't find it again. You look on YouTube, you look on LinkedIn, it's just like, it's missing. But it was an interview with Robert Kraft, and he was talking about, his business ventures and just, when they really had a turning point is when they started to think about partnerships as, it's not just us. Like, we don't need to go into negotiation and take everything. We truly need to make this a win-win. And that was just a massive turning point for his organization. And I think that's the case. And I think that's exactly what you're alluding to. One of the things that needs to happen is it needs to be absolutely top down. I mean, top down from the board, from the executive leadership. They need to be completely bought in. Because if you're coming at it saying, look, we just want another revenue stream, you're not going to have a successful partnership program. I can guarantee it. And I would bet against you. Because, like you just said, it's one of those things where, to have, especially in the space that we came from in the previous venture, there's a lot of investment early on to see the fruitions and see the success, because you are going to make those concessions. I mean, I remember we were working with a large financial institution. We had a direct relationship. At the same time, we had a partnership with one of our bigger accounts, right? It was new, it's exciting. It was a household brand. And I remember one of the executive leaders reached out and said, look, we have an opportunity. We're trying to sell into this account. We heard that you already have activity in this account. Do you think it's possible that we could resell your product through our platform that we're trying to deploy? And we lost some money. I mean, there was no question about it, but that's when the buy-in was there, because I took it right to our CEO and founder and said, like, look at this. This is the case. If we invest now and we short ourselves a little bit on this deal, we're going to see fruits from this, because we're going to get the attention of not only their North America team, their South America team, LATAM, and Asia. And that was the case. I mean, it really springboarded the whole relationship.
And I think you're right. Something you said earlier, if it's not coming from the top, if, a CRO or a VP of sales is making that decision, typically you're living quarter by quarter. So you're going to go with whatever gives you the most revenue today. And you may not be incentivized to look too far into the future. You have a unique title. Not a lot of people get into the C-suite with the title Chief Partnerships Officer. And I would just love your take on, one, how would somebody go from being a partner manager or director to getting into that type of leadership role? And two, what's your advice to companies that don't have that role on their executive team now?
Wow, that's a good question. I oftentimes look at the title and I don't know what it is. Chief Partnership Officer. It is unique. It is unique. I think, again, like, when you think about full buy-in of the organization, the executive leadership, the board, you start to carve out that title, that job description, that strategic influencer and within the organization, just because, like, look at when we go back to the previous venture, especially with a lot of startups, I'm sure there's a lot of startups that are tuning into the Lean Scale podcast. For us, the previous venture, a lot of our partners are actually our potential suitors who was going to acquire us. So it was very much in our advantage to have a focus there. And so I think over time, as we started to not only look at that strategic position, but how the revenue carve out started to be more, the fastest growing revenue stream was partnerships for over 4 years as a result. So not to have, I wouldn't say myself, but somebody in this type of role in that room, I think would be a big disadvantage, right? But yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think with companies, again, sizing it up, it's, you got to look at your go-to-market strategy. You got to look at partnerships. I think companies not truly deep down making that assessment are really, really shorting themselves on the long term, because, if it's not you, you got to step back and go, there may be a competitor that's going to be aligned. It may be a competitor that's going to fill that vacuum. And am I going to be in better shape then? The direct relationship, because of the control, when you sell direct, it is super attractive, but there is a lot of things to consider before you roll out your strategy.
Yeah, and I think you definitely miss out on the acceleration. And something I don't think people think about enough is what you mentioned. Your potential partners are your potential suitors in strategic acquisitions. And most people listening to this podcast, you're in a company that's either marching towards an IPO, which we all know is a very, 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 very small percentage, or a successful strategic acquisition and exit. And in that case, you can really create this opportunity to start to build the relationship with the potential acquirer. And I think that's the best way to do it, because you're starting to already even build in company synergies. You're building relationships with the company. You're starting to size up how you may operate together, how you may integrate, where the product synergies may be. You have potentially years to test that out, where if you think you're just going to walk up and ask somebody to buy your company, that's not going to happen.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, look at, the synergies are critical, right? When companies evaluate, acquisitions they're going to potentially make. And, it wasn't by random chance that, in 2017, we decided to put an office in Atlanta next to LexisNexis's headquarters, along with Equifax. We really wanted to make that investment. We really wanted to nurture the relationship. We did want to show the cultural similarities and that collective team dynamic. And I think obviously it paved the way towards where we are at today and the success that we had at Emailage.
I think so too. And one thing I know you've always been good about, I'm familiar with your strategy here, and I'd love to hear you dive into a little bit, but the difference between having lots of partners versus a select few, how do you think through that, and how do you select a partner to start investing in?
Oh, that's a phenomenal question. Phenomenal question. I think it's different from all organizations. I think, look at today at wealth.com, it's different than it was at Emailage. Our go-to-market strategy is different. It's a B2B to C play. Really, we look at all of our advisor relationships, wealth management firms, the big enterprise players that we're working with today as partners, right? So stepping back from that and maybe focusing more on the venture that we were working together, and obviously with the successful acquisition, it's about the intentionality, right? Because we had limited bandwidth, limited resources, and to do things right, you really have to make that type of investment. And so earlier on, about 2016, it was an evaluation of the partners. I think we had 23 partners at that time. And at that time, we had 23 partners that was producing very, very little revenue. And so we took a step back and we just assessed, we looked at who do we really truly want to partner with, and where can we really look and say there is an obvious 1 + 1 = 11. And so through that, we actually terminated quite a few of those relationships. And then that focus approach started. And again, going back to the alignment between the whole organization, is those first years were quite an investment where we weren't necessarily seeing that immediate return. And that's something that people just need to have an appetite for, right? And fortunately, our board and Ray Carvalho, our CEO and founder, were completely aligned with this because they saw the bigger vision, right? And we decided to take the focus approach. And I can just tell you, like, example. I mean, one of the major card issuers that we partnered with, we put a ton of investment there. I mean, I remember being on a plane even over Thanksgiving and spending time in their Dubai office, Sydney office, London office, Mexico City office. But it was like this hearts and minds tour. And we knew it going into it. Yep. And it was just interesting being in a boardroom and they're like, you are everywhere. And this is their executive leadership, right? And that really paved the way because we started to build that trust and that we're going to be there for the long run. And we're really investing in this relationship. At the end of the day, these relationships are just like any human relationship, right? And I always said it to my team, it's like, we got to build such a high level of trust that if they called our personal phone at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, they know we're going to pick up that call and be as eager to problem solve their situation as they are. And once you kind of get there and you convince that, that's where you start to see things really blossom. And it's incredible. And it's a ton of fun to see it happen,
Absolutely. No, you said it. They're human relationships. It takes time to build. And I don't think people are wanting to invest that amount of time. I don't think people realize that, the multiple trips and being on the road and being there in person and taking the time to get to know those partners on a personal level is worth it. Most of the people we're working with are measuring conversion rates and sales cycles and wanting to know where the return is right away. And sometimes you can't measure it. And something we talk about on the Lean Scale podcast quite often is just tactically, what does a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month look like for somebody who's in partnerships? And you alluded to it a little bit, but I'd like you to go deeper. If you're in partnerships, you're managing a portfolio of partners, what should your schedule look like?
And
I know it'll be different a little bit for everybody, but in general, like how much in-person time do you index over other things? And what does it take to build the type of relationships that you have built in the past?
I would actually over-index the fact that you got to be there in person. I mean, the reality is it's a life on the road. Obviously before COVID, post-COVID, but now since the world's getting back to the swing of things, right? I think we all just have like very much like, I heard you got to have goldfish memory, a memory of a goldfish, right? 10-second memory. So I guess that's how we are with COVID, right? It's behind us now. Let's move on. Let's get on planes again. Let's get to conferences. But what I'm trying to say is, over-index on the travel. Get there, be in person, shake their hands, meet them, meet their team. Get everyone's buy-in. Treat everyone with that organization with the same respect that you would actually treat that executive leader. Because at the end of the day, especially, and I imagine, many of your partners and clients that you work with, all being in the technology space, there's just such a bad reputation of vendors that are out there that are set it and forget it. Just like you said, waiting for that check to come in, the money to come in, but are not there. And so even earlier on, while you're prospecting and building that relationship with the partner, they start to see that earlier on in the process. Then they have the faith and the trust when you say, look we're Kit Glove, we're layering on the resources. They don't need to take a second look. They trust that because they've already seen it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you have to differentiate yourself. And talking about COVID, I think you may stand out even more now. Mm-hmm. So now that people aren't, I think, yes, travel's picked up a little bit more. There are more conferences. But I see a lot of people who are still spending most of their year at home. And I think if you get out on the road, get in front of people, you can stand out even more than you could before.
Take advantage of it. You're 100% right. Take advantage of it. I remember earlier on, before we launched Wealth.com, spending time in New York, spending time in California, getting on the road. And I just remember, big institutions where they're saying, hey, look, we're not back yet, or we're doing a hybrid, or we're doing this, but we'd love to meet with you. And that's where we're like, hey, we have a WeWork location. Let's have coffee. Let's have lunch. They're eager to get out there. They're eager to meet you. Yeah, it is an advantage where you could come in there and really, again, it's, people have gotten really comfortable in COVID. I get it. You want to be in your sweatpants. You want to wear your sandals. Like, we're all there. Like, I love my the work days at home, but for you to build a thriving business and build a culture of success and build actually like partners and clients that are evangelists of your product, and going back to what that woman said on that plane, where your partners want you to win, you got to break bread with them. You got to be there with them.
Yeah, I think it's winning the hearts and minds. It's not just about the pricing and product combination sheets. It's really about, like you said, when you're on the flight, having them want you to win and going out of their way so that you win. That takes time, and it takes some real connection.
And it has to come to a place where, I think like building, we're really excited here at Wealth, building the evangelist that we built so early on. It's just been absolutely incredible. But even at Email Age, it was the same thing. And it was that investment that was really relationship. It was taking that 3 a.m. call. It was their understanding their personal situation as well, the dynamics within their organization. So yeah, I think that this is just, it's ripe for the taking. I think anyone that's listening to this podcast is thinking about a partnership program. Definitely open up an expensive budget. Let your team get out there. Let your team get on the road. I'll tell you something. Some of the most strategic and valuable information I have heard, and which informed some of our strategy at the previous venture, was actually those conversations, those off-the-cuff things that happen in the break room while you're getting coffee, or when you took that the Uber ride to that restaurant. Where you just get that bit of this, you get a bit of that. You can't accomplish that over a video call.
They're not going to share that on a recorded Zoom?
They're not going to. Exactly. And anyone that's listening, I have to tell you this. I'm not a fan of the recorded Zoom personally.
No, me neither.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit much.
No, unless it's very operational, it's training, it's something like that. I completely agree.
Do you really want your prospects and clients just to be guarded the whole time on a call? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
No, I prefer, hey, be comfortable, be candid, because they never know where that's going to be shared. So no, I'd like to turn the recording off.
It's funny. It's the same thing like with the podcast. It's like lights, camera, action. Somebody just freezes up. Why would you not think that would be the same case? I say, hey, we're joining a Zoom call. You mind if I record this call and it's going to live in the universe for eternity?
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
I'm going to send it to your boss after too. So.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Here's the part that I always thought was almost terrifying. Yes. About being in partnerships. Because you talk about you're on the road, you're building relationships, you're building, in a lot of cases, true friendships in those business relationships that you're building. And then you have channel conflict. How does your mind even work? What framework do you use when you may have 3 or 4 partners you have a great relationship with? They're all vetting for the same deal you're going after. They're all expecting you to be there for them and have their back and support them. How do you manage that double agent lifestyle of being in both ends of each side of the partnerships and just managing the potential conflicts that could come up?
Well, there's some foundational things you have to have in place. One of them is this, like, don't favor a partner. And what I'm saying is, when you think about your support, getting on the road, being there in person, giving access to different departments within your team, your technology department, giving them early access and visibility and roadmap, like, you cannot cherry pick partners. You got to make level playing field for all. If a partner chooses, hey, we don't need your support, we don't need your help, and they're standoffish, well, then that's their issue. But you as an organization, as a partnership team, you need to make sure you are absolutely fair to all your partners. I think commercially too, you got to make sure that, I've always said this, when you're in a commercial negotiation, you should feel comfortable enough of what you're negotiating that if it was exposed to their competitor, one of your partners, but one of your partner's competitors that's partnered with you, you should be okay with that. Because if you're going into the negotiation, everyone has level playing field, then they need to really add that layer of value to be able to close that deal. And it's not on you.
How do you start teeing that up early on in the relationship? Letting them know it's going to be letting them know it's going to be an even playing field, letting them know that you're not going to have favoritism. How do you balance that while also winning hearts and minds and and saying you're going to have their back.
Look, at the end of the day, it's, you got to have it in writing, got to have it in communication. You got to put that offer out there, with the team that managed, the variety of different relationships with partners that competed on many different deals. It's just that, hey, if they have an event, we'll be there, right? We'll be there. If they have a request to be there at a client meeting or a prospecting meeting, we'll be there. And if they tell us no, we have that in writing, we have that in communication. Now, whether they, we're never going to get into, well, I did this and I did this, but at least that we know, true to our hearts, that we were fair to both parties.
That makes a lot of sense. I think just honest, clear communication, getting the communication out front and not waiting for a situation to happen before you make those expectations clear, I think is really important. And then supporting in other ways.
Yeah.
Other ways that wouldn't cause as much conflict.
I mean, I think thinking about some of the different partnerships in the past, we became a little annoying, I think. just begging to be there and really wanting to support, because we knew, like, in order for them to be successful, we need to be an extension of their team. I remember we had a partner based out of Tel Aviv that was difficult, because it was a difficult partner to manage, because just the distance, in addition to that, obviously dealing with time zones. But we knew that there was a lot of opportunity in this relationship. There's a lot of interesting things that we could explore as far as like the technology is, but then also just like the team dynamic. You could feel it on a call. That's the type of investment. I mean, I had my team fly out there multiple times. And then, after the second, the third, the fourth visit, you would see them, sharing, fun activities and just deepening their knowledge. And that contract grew exponentially. Which was extremely valuable for us, but extremely valuable for them to hit their objectives. So, again, I think sometimes you're knocking on the door, you're begging to help, but you have to have a willing participant on the other side of the table too.
Absolutely. Something I've struggled with, I know a lot of our customers struggle with, because I think there's a lot of gray area to it and it's just tough to do, is measuring the success of your partner program. And let me share, this is what we typically see as a challenge, and I'd really, really like your insights on this. You have a select few partners, you have your direct business that's also running as well. And so a lot of people naturally would say, well, I'm going to measure the success of my partner program by how much revenue the partners are bringing in. When sometimes you may want to win direct instead of winning through a partner. Maybe it depends which way it goes. How do you measure the success of a program, and what are some data points that you might be able to look at to tell whether the investments you're making are ultimately paying off or not?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a couple things. One, measuring success of the channel program. If you take a step back, because you're talking about both competing interests, you have a direct team that's selling direct, of course, and then you have your partner and your channel team, and they have their own, KPIs that they're trying to reach. I think aligning that incentive structure is absolutely foundational and critical, because again, this isn't relevant to the company wealth.com, because we really do look at almost everyone we interact with as a partner, but more to the other venture where we had 47% of our revenue coming from channel, you had 53 coming through direct. You also wanted to balance it correctly too. You don't want to be over concentrated in a single partner because there's risk there. So there's always things to consider. And that's why, again, going back to a chief partnership officer role or somebody to be there in that room with the executive leadership is very, very important to be able to continue to drive that intelligence, talk about the dynamics because they're hearing it firsthand and they're seeing it. So jumping back to that point, but again, the incentive structure. So one, when we built out our program, we did not align the partnership's KPIs just on pure revenue of what was coming through channel. What we actually did was base it off of overall revenue targets and revenue goals, meaning the team will succeed absolutely together, meaning the channel team wins when the direct team wins. Also, when we're in those negotiations, internally negotiating whether should we go direct because, there is a justification, the initial lead came in through the direct team, or should we actually go through ABC partner because of XYZ reasons? We could sit there with clear conscience with both team members and say, look, let's take a step back. This makes more sense to go through the channel partner. And these are the reasons why. We don't have to do direct connection, which then will lengthen the sales cycle. We can immediately see revenue. And plus, this will also deepen the relationship with this partner, and they have access to these additional prospects that we were targeting. So, and aligning the incentive structure is very important. I do have to go back though. You got to have a partnership, the program that's driving revenue, driving new lead, unlocking new opportunities. Those are the things you got to analyze on a monthly basis at a minimum with leadership, just to continue to get people as enthusiastic as they should be for what's going on in the channel team. But yeah, it's hard things to balance, sometimes hard things to measure, because like even at the previous venture, we did have a list. We knew who was interested suitors in a potential acquisition. So that was part of it as well. So each organization probably have their own unique things that they're going to evaluate. I can just tell you the previous venture, the balancing of it was a day-to-day challenge with the direct team. We may need to cut that one. I don't know. Maybe.
No, I think that's brilliant because it's hard. I don't envy the role. I don't envy the position that partnerships teams are in because I know how difficult it is. And you need people that are really, really dynamic, can think strategic, can think long-term while still getting short-term wins. There's just so much to balance.
I mean, I've been there in deals as the head of partnerships, managing, again, critical partnerships to the organization. And I've sat there in deals and said, look, there is little justification for that opportunity to go to the partner. It came in lead. It came in through our direct team. Our direct team has nurtured it. And so I would sit back and be able to say, look, partner, I would have to get on the call with their executive leadership and explain the full dynamics in the sense that, hey, I can't steal this from our direct team. You guys came in late in the game, but there's more opportunities that we can achieve and win together. Let's just go after the next one.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think the best way we found to measure is looking at revenue, looking at bookings, looking at pipeline generation and lead sourcing. That starts to give you an idea. So if you're looking for really objective metrics, I think you do have to measure them, but then I think take it with a grain of salt with the subjective benefits of the partnership. Are they a potential acquirer? Or do they have that level of strategic value in your organization? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Are you co-marketing or developing content together? Or are they helping you serve your customers in other ways that's not directly related to revenue? Looking at those subjective aspects, but I would say have them on paper and really make sure the organization knows that, hey, we may make some concessions on the revenue side or the pipeline gen side because they're doing these other things that add enterprise value to our organization too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, without a doubt. I think sometimes even with a deeper partnership, the 1+1 of the solution integration could be a huge differentiator. And then also just like, there's many different opportunities that we had multiple direct through different use cases. And then this all too well, right? That we now also manage through multiple partners. We work with one of the larger financial institutions. I think we had 2 direct and then 2 partner, and the 2 partner use cases were actually from 2 different partners. So yeah, it's, you need to balance it. But to your point, all those key metrics are important for you to track, of course. It's, again, it comes back to mostly the same kind of basics that you're looking at the direct side of the business, plus all those strategic elements.
Well, before I sum things up, any advice, somebody stepping into a partnership role, an organization developing a partnership business function, or maybe even opening up that C-suite position to have a chief partnership officer, anything you want to leave the listeners with if they're thinking about any of those things?
I mean, look, if you're in, you're all in. Go for it. Okay. You can't, have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Assess it and make the decision. But when you make the decision, be willing to invest. Because, oftentimes the initial phase of it is a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of focus. You're not going to see that return. But you put that effort in, you're going to start to see that return over time. I also think step back and look, what if we didn't do this? What if we didn't partner? it's not purely like a revenue game. I mean, look at potential situations where a competitor may start to displace you, and they're going to start having the opportunity to scale and unlock new opportunities because you're not there. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. So I think measuring all that, and when you're ready to go, really go for it and have a top-down approach, get everybody on board, and then build out an experienced partnership team that can nurture those relationships and ultimately build a program that can, balance it all.
Yeah, I love it. All in. Do it or don't.
Yeah, do it. Well, do it or don't. I mean, look it's not for everybody. I've spoken to a lot of people over the years, especially in the previous space. There was a lot of vendors that were out there. You go to the event, and a lot of them wanted a partner. A lot of them wanted to build a relationship with ABC Company, but just couldn't get through, couldn't muster it, couldn't make it happen. And I think that they really, again, just didn't have an all-in type strategy. And I think they weren't really willing to commit the resources, and then got too short-sighted when deals started to flow in on the direct side, where they would start to behave in a way where they would already start damaging those relationships. So it's a tough game.
Absolutely. Well, I love it. I think to wrap it up in summary, hey, the investments are going to take some time. So know that it takes in-person time. It takes real relationship building time. It's not always easy to measure objectively. So you have to have some objective and subjective measurements. And I'd argue, hey, if anybody's interested in building a partnership program, get that executive leadership role in as early as you can. Give somebody the authority to make the decisions that the company needs to make strategically, and make the bet if you think it's going to be good for your business. So, Tim, thank you so much. This was awesome. I hope this isn't the last one we do. I think we could probably go on about a million topics. William, thank you for being a guest here today, and hope to have you on the next one too. So, Tim, thank you so much.
Got to tell you, this is awesome. Love this setup. Hayden, thank you so much for making the magic happen. It's great to be in the studio here with you and do this, and I would love to do it again. I'm sure William will play a more prominent role in the next one. All right?
Might have him hosting next time.
I think it wouldn't be a horrible idea, What generation are you?
Alpha now?
Is it Alpha?
I think it's just like we're going to repeat the alphabet.
It's millennial, X, Alpha. Anyways, cool.
Thank you so much, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you liked the discussion, please like, share, and subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss a new episode.